Jon Richardson reveals the heartbreaking reason behind quitting comedy after divorce. Jon Richardson, one of the famous comedians in the UK, surprised fans when he announced that he was taking a break from comedy after his marriage broke down. In a recent interview, he shared about the difficulties and the reasons behind this decision. Marriage and comedy career. Jon Richardson married his longtime girlfriend in 2015. The couple built a happy home together, and Jon always shared that family was a great inspiration in his career. However, after 6 years of living together, they decided to divorce, much to the regret of many fans. Changes after divorce. After the divorce, Jon Richardson felt lost and empty. He shared that the breakup not only affected his personal life but also had a big impact on his work. He found it difficult to find joy and creativity on the comedy stage, deciding to temporarily leave the stage. During this difficult period, Jon decided to temporarily stop his comedy activities to focus on healing his soul and finding balance in his life. He shared that this was a necessary step to be able to come back stronger in the future. Looking to the future. Despite taking a temporary break from the stage, Jon Richardson affirmed that he has not completely given up on comedy. He is spending time writing and planning new projects. Fans hope that his return will bring humorous and profound performances, reflecting the journey of overcoming difficulties in life. After his final show in Manchester, Jon Richardson walked off the stage to a standing ovation, but he knew it wasn't a happy man's applause. When you go on stage and try to make people laugh and you're on the verge of tears, it's a feeling no one ever taught you how to deal with, he told The Times. After his divorce, Jon shared that he spent many sleepless nights in his new flat, without the familiar laughter of his ex-wife, without the small talk they used to share. "She was my biggest audience," he said, looking off into the distance, "and now, who am I playing for?" Can comedy save the funny? The world once thought of Jon Richardson as the funny and quirky friend of 8 out of 10 cats does countdown. With his obsessive titillation, his clever self-deprecation and his charming delivery. But behind the scenes, Jon was a perfectionist who was so afraid of making mistakes that he lost his happiness. "Comedy is a way for me to control my fear. I can make fun of everything, which means I'm in control," he admits. But divorce is something you can't control. It just comes, and you just keep quiet. Finding yourself in the little things. Away from the spotlight, Jon began to return to the simple things. He spent a lot of time gardening, reading, walking in the park, and occasionally going to quiet cafes, where no one would recognize him. "I started writing again, not to perform, but to understand what I was thinking," Jon says. Some of his diary entries, later shared as a podcast titled, "Letters to Myself," received unexpected sympathy from thousands of people going through similar losses. Not leaving comedy, just putting it on hold to revive it. Jon has always maintained that he hasn't given up on comedy, he just needs a new version of himself to continue. "I used to think comedy was all I had. Now I understand. Before you can make people laugh, you have to learn to laugh at yourself, even when things are falling apart." Recent rumors suggest that he's quietly developing a new solo show, one that's no longer about jokes, but about deeper, more mature, even sadder stories. But in the spirit of British comedy, we laugh because if we don't laugh, we cry. "I'll be back, with a realer smile." In an emotional Instagram post, Jon wrote, "I used to think that if I fell silent, I would disappear. But then I realized, sometimes you need silence to hear yourself better. Thank you to those who are still waiting for me to come back. See you next time, where sadness can also be a part of laughter." The empty living room and the cracking silence. On a late February evening, with the wind blowing through the windows that had not yet been replaced with new curtains, Jon sat on the sofa in his newly rented flat in Leeds. The sofa had a 3-seater, but now only one person was using it. On the table, his tea was cold and the book he had intended to read was open to page 12, the same page from last week. I've lost the habit of talking to myself, he wrote in his diary. No one is there to laugh at me when I mumble nonsense. It turns out that silence is more than a sound, it's a feeling. Years ago, Jon had joked that he was programmed to be lonely, living with OCD, thinking he would never love, never marry. Then he fell in love, married, lived, was happy. And when it all fell apart, the loneliness returned, this time without humor. Friends, bread and darkness. The only person who dared knock on his door during the crisis was Josh Widdicombe, his close friend and longtime colleague. Josh would often bring him toast and a cheese platter, sometimes a cold beer. They didn't talk much, they just watched old episodes of Peep Show or The Office. Jon didn't need anyone to talk him out of it, he just needed someone to sit next to without having to laugh, Josh shared in a later podcast. Comedy was his thing, but at that moment, he needed silence more than applause. The comeback wasn't about acting, it was about living. After 6 months of complete silence, no stage, no recording, no podcast, Jon suddenly reappeared in a small show in Brighton. No promo, no lights, just about 50 people in the room. He took to the stage, crumpled up in his hand, staring at the floor for the first 3 minutes. Then he said, in a deeper voice than usual, I spent the last half year not trying to make anyone laugh. And to be honest, I miss that. But I also learned one thing. If you're going to come back, don't pretend to be happy. Quote.